Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Energy Realities podcast. You can't buy this kind of entertainment. It is actually Monday morning at 7 o'clock Central U.S., and we have got an action-packed podcast for you today. I've got Irina Slav in Bulgaria, and I love your sweater, and it's got to be snowing there.
Yes, it has been snowing. We are having a white after Christmas. It's lovely.
I love that. And then we have the David Blackmon, not just a David Blackmon impersonating David Blackmon. We have the David Blackmon, an original, not a clone. And he's from the great state of Texas. How are you, sir?
I'm great. We had our own white after Christmas in Texas last week. Had snow and ice on the ground for 4 days, and the damn grid didn't even fail. It was wonderful.
Wow.
That's kind of cool.
Good for ERCOT, by the way. I want to just give a shout out to ERCOT for doing a great job. Thank you.
You know, it was a little bit of pre-planning on that. And when you sit back and take a look at the grid, I had Dr. Brett Bennett that I interviewed, and Texas has spent $150 billion on wind, solar, and storage. Do you know what we could have done with $150 billion? We could have had no wind and solar on the grid.
Well, that would be the better outcome, of course. But
oh, absolutely. And then we have Dr. Tammy Nemeth joining the stage. And I'm trying to add Tammy if it'll allow me.
There we go.
Hi, everybody.
How are you this morning, Tammy?
I'm doing okay. I have a bit of a cold, so I might not be talking so much today, which is great for you guys.
Well, I am glad there's a podcast mic in between us and about an ocean, so I'm okay with that. I don't want to get sick. But today's discussion is we have got to be visiting about. Let's see. StreamYard is not doing well these days. I think it's got a cold. Natural gas. Shifting markets, challenging the bridge fuel narrative. It seems like we have got an absolute change in the global markets. When you take a look at energy security starts at home, a great podcaster has once said, but energy dominance comes through your exports. Well, the United States is doing a great job exporting things, but who's going to buy it? And when you sit back and kind of look, a pipeline in the EU is ballpark $3 US and buy natural gas. And then you take a look at bringing in LNG, it's about $18. So LNG is kind of expensive. Why don't you just buy Russian gas? I'm not sure. I'm going to go ahead and throw this natural gas discussion out. David or Irina, what are your thoughts on that?
You go, David.
No, Irina.
Oh, well, I'm going to comment for a bit on the bridge fuel story because it really fell apart this month. What with all this unusual and absolutely unexpected cold weather gripping such big parts of Northern Europe, it's almost as if it's winter. And winter comes with cold and snow and sub-zero temperatures that require a lot of heating for people to stay alive and relatively comfortable, which in turn led to a surge in natural gas prices, both in Europe and the United States. And actually, your gas prices, Bloomberg said that they rose by 117% in the space of 5 days.
Yep.
This is not bridge fuel. This is vital fuel. It's not a bridge to anything because, as Stu said before we went live, how much did you say Texas had spent on wind, solar, and storage? 120 billion or 150 billion?
150 billion in 26 years.
150 billion. to have what? Gas save the day and keep people warm. That's not a place after a bridge. It's just not. And Europe has been, draining its gas storage because prices are up. And still, I understand that LNG imports into Europe have been at record highs since the start of the year. And still, they've had to dig deep into storage because they can't cope. What happens to all the solar and wind? It's not working because of the weather. So I think we can kind of, discard the whole bridge fuel story because it's just another lie. There is no bridge. Gas is here to stay because people need it, especially in winter. They will be needing it in summer as well, when it will be hot and will need air conditioning. So yeah, that's what I wanted to say. We have to forget this whole bridge fuel story.
From a industrial standpoint, when we sit back and take a look at the deindustrialization going on with net zero and the policies around it, natural gas is needed for steel. Coal is needed because we need coking coal for steel. We need natural gas for industrial. We need natural gas for fertilizer. And when you look at the heat and the molecules needed for industrialization, I don't understand how the EU, the UK, Canada, or Democrat-run states are going to survive in the industrial world without natural gas. Tammy, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Irina that it's not really a bridge. It's just a fuel. And you need that fuel, like you pointed out, Stu, for all of these different elements that make our modern industrial society work and function. And by trying to say that wind and solar and batteries can make up the difference and fill everything out is just, as we've talked about a lot, just not really practical or realistic. That being said, it's like the EU finds itself in this conundrum because it doesn't have a lot of indigenous resources, natural gas or oil or whatever, unless it's offshore. And even then, they want to purchase it from Norway. The Netherlands had shut down its fields. I don't know what the progress is for, I think they were supposed to be reopening some of their natural gas fields, but I don't know because there was the court case that said they had to shut them down because of earthquakes or whatever. So what that means for the future is they're dependent on these resources that other people have. And so I think maybe what will happen is nuclear. But then you see Germany where they get absolutely rabid about the potential for nuclear to have a meltdown or be used for nuclear weapons. Although the Scandinavian countries last week, which I thought was hilarious, where they said, now's the time when we need nuclear weapons.
Yes.
It's like Sweden has been the most anti-nuclear country throughout the 70s and 80s. And now suddenly we need nuclear weapons to intimidate America. Like, I don't know. It was just the most bizarre thing. But this is what happens.
Russia. It's all about Russia for the Nordics. Somehow they think Russia is going to target. But sorry for interrupting you, but Germany's Merz is talking about nuclear weapons as well. Just this week.
Yeah.
I know. It's insane. It's I remember being at a conference where the environmentalists, the anti-nuclear people disrupted the event, and they were just so crazy and, shouting and not letting people talk. And this would be devastation. It just takes one accident and everything's destroyed. And they just would not stop. And so when that kind of attitude affects the policymakers who are afraid, and they've been intimidated by the activists from whether it's the green movement, the anti-nuclear, whatever, when they feel intimidated, then this is where we get bad policy. And at some point they have to just suck it up and do what's right for the economy and society if they want to have a modern industrial technological society. If they want people to go back to being hunter-gatherers, well, then just say it. Because otherwise, this is the situation we're in where the policies don't make any sense, and now they're scrambling to try to figure out how to keep the heat and lights on.
Exactly. So, during our big freeze event last week in Texas, I was online on X a lot and getting all kinds of comments from idiots who don't know anything about energy. And one guy posted and said, well, if you just build 10 gigawatts of solar, you shut down all the natural gas plants in Texas.
Oh, please.
Well, hell, we've built 60 gigawatts of capacity of solar in Texas in just the last 6 or 7 years. And solar contributed what during the big freeze event? Pretty much nothing that mattered. It came up and contributed for pretty significantly for a few hours, the third day and the fourth day. Otherwise, it was zero or near zero. The storage was often draining the grid because it was getting charged and contributed almost nothing to anything. The workhorse on the Texas power grid was natural gas. There were times during the depths of the freeze event when natural gas was supplying over 70% of all actual generation on the Texas grid. That's what kept people safe and warm during the big freeze event. Not solar, not wind. Wind did pretty good when conditions got ideal on the second and third day. And
When conditions were ideal.
Well, the wind was blowing, and they didn't
exactly
all the freezing rain that froze the turbines up in 2021, right? So wind kept blowing. Wind would generate as long as the wind was blowing, right, in West Texas. But that, of course, is you don't know when that's going to happen and when it's not going to happen. We were just so fortunate to have all that natural gas. The natural gas system didn't freeze up at all like it did during Winter Storm Uri, because of all the policy changes that were made after Uri by the legislature, by the PUC, by ERCOT, by the Railroad Commission to keep the gas system from freezing up. And so nobody had any blackouts. Nobody died in Texas like had been dying in the Northeast during the horrible depths of this event they're having, because their grid is so unstable. So natural gas is absolutely the key in Texas. It's, they're finding out in Europe, as Irina and Tammy have talked about, that they have to have it in Europe, in Germany, to keep people from dying during major freeze events. And at the same time, they've got this terrible war in Ukraine and are trying to finally wean themselves off of Russian natural gas 4 years into the war. Which, they've been funding Putin's war machine this whole time. And where are they getting their gas? They're getting it from the United States because the trade routes are shorter and it's cheaper, a little bit cheaper than getting it from Qatar or Australia. I pointed out on X over the weekend that before the Ukraine invasion, almost 80% of LNG cargoes out of the United States went to Asian markets. Mm-hmm. That shifted. That equation completely turned around to Europe within 3 months of that invasion. And it's been that way ever since. Most of our cargoes go to Europe. It's a very short trade route, very short shipping route, lower transportation costs. And it's the life's blood of some of the grids there in Europe now. And that's, I just want to say one last thing and then I'll shut up. The bridge fuel narrative was always bullshit. It was a narrative made up by the radical environmental activists to demean natural gas as a fuel. And sadly, along about 15 years ago, a lot of people in the oil and gas industry bought into that narrative and parroted that narrative and spread that narrative and amplified it. And now, we're finally figuring out, well, you know what? That was bullshit and we shouldn't have been saying that stuff. So thank goodness for, at least people have the capacity to learn. Anyway.
That's the Enron effect.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's exactly what it was.
David, for our listeners, this is a 2004 panel, and you look at for $150 billion, look at that little tiny brown spot up there in the right-hand corner for solar. And then you look at wind. This is almost a good representation of what happened during the storm, but this is for the all the years coming along here. So 150 billion in an energy addition, not an energy replacement. There is absolutely
and look
no
what's
way.
happening to the green part of that thing in recent years. That's natural gas, and it's expanding. It's not contracting, and it's going to keep expanding because you can pile all the capacity for solar and wind onto our grid that you want to. The problem is when you need it the most, they fail. And that's the real problem. You have to build a grid that's going to save people's lives during major weather events, whether it be hot or cold. And that's what Texas failed to do for about 10 years. You know, people lost sight of the fact that you've got to build a grid that performs during big emergencies. And that's what caused our failure during Uri. And now we've recovered from it because our politicians, unlike politicians in California and the Northeast, have the capacity to learn and correct their mistakes. So at least we got to give them that much credit.
So that chart that you put on there, is that capacity or actual generation?
Generation.
That was actual generation, yeah.
That was not capacity. Capacity, we have 100 and
wind and solar would be half.
We have 150 megawatts of nameplate capacity on the Texas grid, but we only need 82 gigawatts of our peak for 2025. But so you sit back and think about how much extra. I want to add one big, ugly baby to this conversation. This is a Jerry Nadler size ugly baby. As we have asynchronous and DC direct current for wind and solar, Jerry Nadler says, wait a minute, hold my beer. I'm going to put a really ugly baby on this doorstep. And that is the natural gas turbines are being asked to spin up. And then when wind and solar are then being providing it, hey, it's either windy or it's in the daylight hours. And in the UK, when there's 15 minutes of sun, yay, we get to produce. So they're producing, and then they're telling the gas turbines to shut down. What happens to gas turbines when they have to turn on and turn off? Maintenance costs go through the roof. Who's paying that maintenance cost? It's being attributed to the natural gas supplier.
Yeah,
I've said this before, and that is in Vietnam. My dad would sit there next to his F-4 fighter, and they would do hot swaps on the pilots because military takes turbines, and they actually only measure how many times you turn that turbine on and you turn it off, not the hours it's used, because that's how turbines break on and off.
Yeah.
And the amount of maintenance is in the millions of dollars that the consumers in the United States are paying for additional turbine maintenance is going all the way to the through the utilities to consumers to get wind and solar so we can feel good about ourselves. Go figure that one out. Thanks for letting me
virtue signaling is the big driver of all this, of course. You know, politicians want to.
I don't know. I couldn't let David be the only one ranting this morning. So,
I got work
question for Tammy or David. This is from SRB 1855 regarding Europe and LNG. Isn't the problem Europe relies too heavily on LNG, whereas they previously used pipeline? LNG comes with 3x or 4x premium.
I mean, yeah.
Irina, I think Irina should answer that one.
I do too.
No, it's not a question for me, so you answer it. I mean, the answer is really obvious, but it wasn't to me. So.
Well, of course, right? Because like you guys pointed out at the beginning, it's like they were pipeline gas until the Russian invasion, and now Russia is persona non grata, you know, where everything can't come from Russia. there was a story I circulated this morning before the podcast that Slovakia is suing the EU because the EU is saying you have to phase out all of your natural gas pipeline natural gas from Russia. And Slovakia is like, we have no alternatives. What are you talking about? And so this goes back to what I've been saying before is like, what happens when there's peace with Russia? It's one thing, back in the 70s and 80s, the EU was very cognizant of supply diversification, that you didn't want all your supply eggs in one basket, that you wanted to have your supply coming from multiple different areas and jurisdictions so that you wouldn't be over dependent on one thing or another. Now before they became over dependent on Russia, now they're over dependent on America, which has all these extra costs baked into it. And so they're in a dilemma. How do you diversify your supply, help lower the costs? And I think one of the other issues that's developed, I would say, since the late 1980s and 90s is there used to be long-term pricing contracts. Now everything seems to be on the spot market. The spot market was always meant kind of for emergencies. You would pay that extra cost or whatever if you needed to, if there was some kind of emergency that you had to buy more, but you normally had a long-term price contract so that you could have a better idea for budgeting and what the costs and expenses were going to be. And now it seems like that isn't the case anymore. Maybe I'm wrong and I'm misreading how they do their pricing because it always seems to be rather convoluted. But maybe this is something they ought to go back to. And then my last point would be with respect to this whole conversation, when you're talking about electricity and power generation, capacity means nothing if it's not there when you need it. And I think they always talk about, well, just put more capacity on. Capacity, who cares? You could have 1,000 solar panels, but they don't operate at night when it's freezing. You could have 1,000 windmills that don't operate when it's cold and calm. So what good does it do when it's not there when you need it? So, stop talking about capacity. All that matters is what's generating when you need it. And I have to bring up Meredith Angwin again and her shorting the grid, because it's such a crucial thing that people seem to forget about how grids were originally set up. We need to go back to thinking of what's more realistic and is good for the people. What's good for people, not good for whatever sort of grid ideas policymakers have.
Can I say one thing about diversification of supply sources? I think that is an Enron invention almost exclusively in the United States. And we saw what happened to Enron. In Texas, most people don't realize that both the Texas and California grids and then many other grids throughout the country afterwards were created by Enron and Kinley. Okay. Yeah. The Texas legislature deregulated our market in 99 and 2001 sessions and adopted the Enron model for our grid. We never had blackouts prior to that event. What was the Texas grid made up of prior to that? It was made up, probably over 90% of it was coal and natural gas with a little nuclear and hydro in there, okay? Had virtually no wind, no solar, never had blackouts. We adopt the Enron model, go to this market system, diversify capacity and generation sources, and we have a grid that almost collapsed completely in 2001. It was so unreliable for 15 years. But, through the diversification. And you look at what's happened to California, same kind of process. So I believe personally that this whole thing about diversification is just simply another part of the climate change religion to justify the investment, these billions and billions of dollars of investments in wind and solar and batteries. Because these are the crony industries of the Democratic Party in the United States and the liberal parties across Europe and Canada. And it's a religious exercise more than it is a scientific exercise. And when you think about the germination point for all of it, was the most despicable, dishonest bunch of people ever to exist in the natural gas industry, Enron. maybe it's time to rethink the whole thing. That's just my view.
I have a point to make about spot markets and long-term contracts. The first reason that the EU gas buyers moved from long-term contracts with Gazprom to short ones, one-year contracts, was to reduce their dependency on Russian gas over the long term because they didn't trust Russia. Then the climate change movement, gathered momentum, and they said, so we don't need long-term gas contracts because we wouldn't be needing so much gas in the very near future. That was their thinking. And they tried, and they did build the Trans-Adriatic pipeline from Azerbaijan, but Azerbaijan doesn't have enough gas to supply all that Europe needs, even with US LNG. So basically, Europe has once again stuck itself into a corner. And diversification will be difficult. But I hear they are signing some long-term supply deals with US LNG producers. I remember we had a commenter a few months ago who was from the gas industry, and he said that Europeans are closing long-term agreements because it makes sense. Of course, as you said, Tammy, you can budget more easily and you have supply security for a period longer than a year. And the other thing that they could do, hypothetically, if they want to buy more from Qatar, for example, which they said they do, Dan Jorgensen, the energy commissioner, said last week, they're looking to buy more LNG from Canada and from Qatar. Oh, well, suddenly Canada has a business case for LNG, but we knew that from the start. If they want to deal with Qatar, they will have to forget about that methane regulation, because you can't have all the gas you need, have it cheaply, and force your methane reduction regulation on your gas suppliers. This just won't work. I'm just waiting for them to realize this. I'm wondering how long it will take them.
Well, I don't know how they're going to get the Canadian natural gas. I think some of it right now is being routed through Texas and then shipped over to Europe, because we don't have a gas pipeline for export on the East Coast. There's the West Coast one, and then there's the pipelines that go south to Texas. And I know that Tourmaline Energy had signed this agreement with the EU, but it's shipping it through Texas because we don't have the pipeline to the East Coast.
Same thing with Marcellus shale gas.
Yeah,
they can buy from Canada LNG or LNG Canada. I keep forgetting how the name goes. But so what if it's from the West Coast? I mean, they'll pay for it.
Well, how do you get it around, right?
Yeah, it's diversification.
Yeah, but it's like I understand that they're now like, oh my gosh, I think we're too dependent on the United States, and there's all this rhetoric about America being unreliable and using it as leverage. Well, right, because the EU never uses anything as leverage. Like the whole, you want access to our markets, give us your emissions accounting. Like, that's not using their market as leverage. Give me a break. But yeah. That's the EU. But Brian Zinchuk had some great points there about wind in Alberta and Saskatchewan, that they're being really pressured to put more wind on the grid, which just, makes no sense. Quite often, it just goes to zero when you need it the most, especially in the wintertime when it's really cold and it's still. I mean, you get the whole Dunkelflaute of like what happens in Germany, but in the prairies, it's like many days it's either really super windy where you can't use it anyway, or it's really still and calm and super cold. So, coal, and especially for Saskatchewan, coal is the way until they can get nuclear going. And in Alberta, it's natural gas. And someone here made the point about Germany and the UK still have thousands of years of coal. Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do. As we've said before, and Chris Wright has said, there's technology there that in the coal power plants now where you can scrub it, you can remove the particulates, you can reduce, if emissions is what you're concerned about, there's ways that you can reduce that. So I don't know why you wouldn't use the resources that you have.
Well, it isn't the. Go ahead, Stu. Sorry.
I want to go ahead and say this to the Wolf Raza. I think you're probably, I don't know who you are, but if you don't think climate change is an issue by now, you're brain dead. Hope you have a great day. And I think climate change happens. It's called four seasons. And they are actually in Florida, they banned chemtrails, and we'll just leave it at that. That climate change does happen. I believe Bill Gates was also paying to block out the sun. So why don't we just get rid of all that kind of crap and let's let the earth do what it does?
Bill Gates was
By the
paying
way,
for a lot of
tsunamis
things.
are caused by underwater earthquakes, not climate.
Yeah, I'm well aware of that, but
No,
I'm just saying
he has this comment earlier that we're getting tsunamis and wild temperature fluctuations.
Dogs and
like,
cats
come
living
on.
together in mass hysteria. Yeah, we've
Yeah,
never had
I'm like,
temperature fluctuations.
That is why I said I personally have a problem not with climate change, which is a fact, we can see it. Climate change is sometimes more suddenly than other times. Certain periods are more dynamic than others. What I have a problem with the climate change movement that leads people to this kind of disaster thinking.
Yeah.
People who are scared basically all the time.
Secretary Chris Wright is right again on this, and that is people have quit. The deaths from natural occurrences is down. We are not dying from climate change. Bill Gates has even said we're not going to die from climate change. We're going to die from. We're going to die from the crap that they're putting in our food in the United States. You take a look at the food that we buy from Europe that doesn't have the preservatives and the crap in it. You look at our stuff, they're killing us. Anyway. Last Wednesday, SAC Power said it was going to change a large 1,000 megawatt nuclear reactor. What?
Yeah, in Saskatchewan, Sask Power is the state power company.
Yeah,
and they were talking about SMRs, and now they're talking about a larger nuclear reactor. So, but those things take time, and in the meantime,
about 15 years.
It depends, right?
Yeah, it depends. Yeah.
What are the odds that Alberta actually votes to become independent? Because I think that it would take them a year or two. If they go independent, I would prefer to support them as an independent country rather than be a state, just for their own independence sake. But it seems like there's a big movement going on.
There's a lot of upset people, but I don't know how much traction it has with the overall
it's just so population. Hard.
Nobody's saying
such a complicated process to get there.
They're saying you're wrong about the cause and effect. Tampa just got snow, and it got snow in 1913. Yeah, it happens, but I believe, there's other things going on there. Let's see what this is. What's the electrical peak demand for Saskatchewan? Brian, I'm not sure. Brian would know. The man knows everything.
He does.
Yeah. I think it depends. I think it was like close to 4,000 megawatts, but that's kind of old. So I don't know.
I still think the world is healing. We're waking up to the fact that mainstream media is nothing more than selling narratives pumped to it by a controlling government around the world. That's the United States. That's the EU. It doesn't matter. People are getting their news from podcasts, and all of us have our own podcast and channels and Substacks. And I think that's why our stuff is growing. I am just flabbergasted by the amount of viewers and everything else. I'm not sure if that's me, my stomach, or Jerry Nedler. I'm not sure what's going on. But I still think that the world is healing. There's going to be new trading blocks coming around the corner. I think we're in for a little bit rough ride. Here's what Every politician in Canada is scared. 35% for Alberta separation
in
in
the
the port.
ports. I'm not sure what that means. The port cities, port and the ports.
Yeah,
Or
so
pole.
like he said, yeah, I'm not quite sure. Oh, maybe he meant in the polls. I don't know. They're
Oh,
polling
in the
about
western
that
provinces. Okay.
in the western provinces.
Okay.
What's interesting about the Alberta separation issue is that for 40 years we've been hearing about Quebec separation. They've had 2 referenda on it. And whenever they have a referendum, everybody in Canada is supposed to go and say, please, Quebec, stay, we love you, all this kind of thing. And, oh, your concerns are legitimate. But Alberta separatists are being called treasonous. So it's like they're somehow committing treason by saying we're getting a raw deal in Confederation. But so there's this double standard between the Western separatist movement and the Quebec separatist movement. In fact, there's a political party in Parliament called the Bloc Québécois, which is a separatist party. Well, they're not being called treasonous. So I know it's very frustrating as a Westerner to hear this kind of rhetoric where it's like, why don't you take the concerns legitimately instead of just dismissing them as treasonous?
If I was an Albertan, I think of Alberta. I absolutely love Alberta. Love everybody up there, all the good folks. And I consider it North Texas. I mean, it really is snow Texas, if you want. They're more Texan than the local Texans. I mean, good grief. We've got who's Jazzy Crockett, whatever her name is. We need Jasmine, we need to ship her to Quebec. Only 15% of the rise in temperature of the last few decades is attributable to CO2. The rest is reduction in cloud cover and contamination from the urban heat island effect. That was easy for me to say.
Yeah, thanks, Rodney, for that. Rodney McInnes for that comment.
He's another one that knows a lot. I love Rodney.
I forgot what I was going to say now.
Colds do that to me.
So back to natural gas. Let's say we do have a nuclear revolution, which is obviously having a hard time getting off the ground here with SMRs and rejiggering of the regulatory processes that needs to happen before anything really gets done. But let's say we do eventually have that. What happens to natural gas demand at that point? Does natural gas fall off the cliff, or is there continued strong demand for natural gas? Personally, I think there's going to be continued strong demand, but that's just me. That was a bad question. Okay, so
no,
I think it's a great one. Go ahead.
I haven't considered it. I think it will take some time because you can't just turn everything nuclear overnight. I mean, just building one conventional nuclear power plant takes lots of time. And small modular reactors are not really getting off the ground as fast as many hoped. I have no idea why. So for the observable, I think gas will remain strong.
David, for my Substack I put out here the other day, let me remove that, add this to the stage. The grid assessment from the NERC grid risk assessment for 2026, breaking down the challenges ahead. It was pretty eye-opening. Here's the high risk. Look at that. Bam. You've got all these areas for high risk, but what got me
2030.
Do what?
So Texas goes high risk around 2030 unless there's a lot more investment in natural gas capacity.
This chart that they have, which is on page 32 of the report, I have a link in my Substack to the entire report. Of the billions that we are spending, it looked like we were only going to get 2% of nuclear. I mean, we're going to lose 2%, with all of the billions because of the retiring nuclear plants. We're not replacing what's going to retire fast enough. So are we going to be saved by nuclear, David? Not according to this report.
No,
It's
because
pretty
the lead
frightening.
times on nuclear are too long.
Right. So, I mean, it was pretty frightening when I started looking at nuclear, whether or not the bridge fuel for natural gas is even here. No, it's not a bridge fuel. If you want lights, you're going to have either coal or natural gas, because nuclear is not going to happen fast enough unless you're in China.
So going back to your comment about 150 billion invested in wind and solar in Texas since 2000, basically. That means that in Texas, what has happened in Texas, put in the simplest terms, is we have now, as ratepayers in Texas, paid to build two separate power grids in Texas. We've got this virtue signaling power grid for the politicians to brag about. That's wind and solar and batteries. That fails when we got a weather emergency. And then we've got the conventional grid made up mainly of natural gas, about 20% coal and about 7% nuclear, that saves everybody's lives during major weather events, okay, and keeps the lights on and the homes heated. So what's happened to our rates at my house? My rate has gone up about 70% since 2019. Eventually, the ratepayers pay for it all. It all gets plowed through. It's like putting a corporate income tax on corporations, raising the income tax rate. It all just flows through to the consumer. And so if what it boils down to for the politicians is how much pain the people are willing to tolerate. And if people are willing to tolerate 40, 50%, or in Germany, 300% higher utility bills, or in the UK, 400 or 500% higher, then the politicians will be okay. But if the people are not willing to tolerate that, then the politicians are going to have a real big problem at the end of the day. And
I think they're starting to realize it.
That's just how this all works. But that's really what we've done now in Texas and other parts of the United States, is we paid now to have two separate power grids.
Yeah.
When you only really need one. If you just do the one right, that's all you need. And we've done it as a religious exercise. We're genuflecting to the global church of climate change. And what this commenter, I pissed him off a little while ago, and I don't really care. But I mean, that's what we've done, folks. And if you think of it in those terms, does it really make any sense? I don't think it does.
Aslan Pilot Car, cool cat. Stu, can Texas afford to use nat gas for data center? I'm going to give you two answers. And the answer is yes. In Midland, you have Chevron, you have three U.S. companies, ExxonMobil, you have Chevron, and you have Liberty Energy. Liberty Energy is actually a oil field service company that is also getting into the utility space. All three of those are unlike their EU counterparts, where they actually make money. And that is, they are looking at getting into the utility space in Midland, because the Permian is getting gassier, and the more gas, there is lots of gas there. So the answer is yes, Texas still has a lot of gas, and they just had a new discovery that they put out by the USGS. So the answer is the Henry Hub negative effect in Midland is they were paying to haul their gas off, which is great for the long term. So Liberty. In fact, I'm going to be interviewing Ron Gusick again here real soon. I'm working with his assistant there. So I think I just answered this one. The better question is, natural gas energy dense enough to support the massive energy needs for data centers? And the answer is to that question is absolutely. And so you sit back and take a look. Now, I want to throw this ugly baby onto the doorstep from Robert Bryce. Robert Bryce, who's not Jerry Nadler, is actually a very smart man. I just interviewed him. And I don't know why my Jerry Nadler joke button is now going off. But when you sit back and look at natural gas, Robert Bryce, who actually knows a thing about energy, is actually saying that we have too much. He doesn't want too much of one fuel going into the grid. And I agree with him, but I think that we need
I
nuclear.
disagree with that. I disagree.
Do what?
I disagree with that. I think we have diversified our supply sources almost into oblivion, and it's made it damn near impossible for energy managers, ISOs like ERCOT, to properly manage the grid. And it's just because we have too much unpredictable generation on the grid.
That's the problem. You have too much unpredictable capacity.
Dang.
But what if you had supply diversification of reliable energy? So if you had coal and you had natural gas and you had nuclear, and you just put the kind of wind and solar to the side, but you had a supply diversity of reliable energy, I think that might be a better way to have the grid, because, you know, coal is there, you can stockpile it, which is why China builds so many coal power plants. Yeah. Nuclear is okay as long as it's all operating, you know, really well. Natural gas is good as long as there isn't a disruption to the supply, which you saw during, you know, the last big ice storm in Texas. So I think there's a role there to diversify if it's reliable, and to just diversify for the sake of diversification is not a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, we can build all the wind and solar capacity we want, but it doesn't do you any good if it fails you when you need it. It just doesn't do you any good. Yeah, it's just a complete waste of time.
In my Substack that I just put out, I make a plea. We need to follow, and again, Meredith Angwin, the electric grandma, is one of the coolest cats in the United States. I think she is absolutely a national treasure. We need to readjust how the entire grid is priced. We need to charge wind and solar for what Tammy pointed out earlier, and that is the reliability factor. If you can't be reliable, we need to charge you the amount of the maintenance for the turbines to go up and down. That reliability is that needs to be shuffled from them, not to the ratepayers. Why is it that we have $87 billion of liability on wind in the United States for all of this crap that is now coming up into boneyards when these things start failing? We've got a gigantic so we thoroughly eviscerated this conversation.
It's awesome. Remember, we don't have electricity problem in Europe. The Netherlands has enough windmills.
Yeah.
Well, and that whole new European massive offshore wind project they want to do, just crazy.
Yeah, if anybody takes away the subsidies from wind and solar, or they started charging for unreliability, they'll die, these industries.
Yes, they will.
They'll die really fast.
If you just force the developers to insure against real retirement costs at the end of life, which means digging up those foundations and retiring them, because we're condemning millions of acres of arable lands in the United States to build these damn windmills that will never be usable again. And that's because there's no requirement for proper retirement. If there was, nobody would invest in wind.
I'm not sure I love MD Bone, but I don't know what this comment is. I'm avoiding the Super Bowl because I could care less about Bad Bunny, bonehead play from the NFL. NFL just lost me as a customer.
It's a rigged league. Most of the games are rigged.
I think
we've seen that this season conclusively.
Oh no, these two.
I have way too many things to do. I've got to go work on my backhoe, work in my shop. I got welding to do. I got things that are important in my life as opposed to dealing with the NFL. I think we thoroughly wiped out this discussion. All those in favor of keeping
I thought it
nuclear
was just
plants
getting
open?
good, man.
Yes.
Just kidding. Just kidding.
We're getting some wild comments in here, and
And
I
we
have
set
to
Ryan off too here.
do what?
This Ryan H guy.
I'm not sure
We
who
set
he
him
is.
off. Let's go steal Venezuela's resources. Then let's go steal. Whoops. Then let's go steal Greenland's resources, and then imperialism and colonialism. Okay.
Hold the phone. Let me explain something. China has taken a hold of South America. China has been buying land in the United States. The Don Roe doctrine is in full effect. What just happened last week? The 2 ports in the Panama Canal got handed over to who? Maersk.
Well, nobody yet.
No, the 2 ports were handed over to Maersk, who is a Danish company. How did that happen? You have to ask, did the Don Roe effect just happen? Because how did we get a control of Greenland? Oh, you have to ask what's going on. What's happening in Cuba? Cuba is 2 weeks away from falling apart. What's happening around?
Why would you do that to Cuba? Really, haven't they suffered enough?
They
I really disagree with this.
We need to get China out of the Western Hemisphere, and it's going to happen. So we're not stealing imperial.
Come on, Stu, that's taking it a bit too far. What can China do in Cuba that's so dangerous? We're not going to have another Bay of Pigs or anything like that.
Who was guarding?
The Cubans have suffered for decades. Just leave them alone, maybe.
Let's have that one for a different discussion. But who was guarding Maduro?
Well, obviously they weren't guarding him. Yeah, that's what happens if you lose the trust or the financial the financial comfort of your employees.
So I think the fun thing to do is to sit back and go, what is going to happen after silver bottomed out last week?
Well, Devon's going to buy Coterra. That's what's going to happen.
There you go.
Just announced.
I think the world is changing, and I think that if we can stay out of war, that would be beneficial for. I do not want anyone to go to war, and I agree, Irina, with you that we do not need to be doing regime change. We have regime change going on in the United States with our own government trying to change our own policies. I would love to see the United States do no regime changes anywhere. That would be me.
Yeah, it's neater without regime changes based on what we've seen from previous regime change attempts.
We're not good at it.
Not good at it.
I don't think anybody is good at it, to be honest.
Yeah, exactly.
Not a good thing to do. It's a very messy thing to do.
No, and when you take a look at the Venezuelan people seem to be unhappy that we did not have boots on the ground, and the Cuban people would love to have a regime change. Great. Let's let them and enable them, but not put boots on the ground. I'm for empowering local governments.
That's a kind of compromise that I think is more acceptable. Yeah. Because you will never have everyone happy or everyone unhappy. One's oppressors are another's liberators. It's always this way. But it's just too messy in today's world.
Now, I think there was also a question on OPEC.
Sorry.
There was also a question on OPEC. We've only got a few more minutes here, but I also want to know, OPEC has a thing for changing their oil and gas pricing, or their oil pricing for OPEC in trying to get it realigned to more production and demand. And that's what Saudi Arabia's leadership is trying to do for 2027. And I think that we're going to see natural gas and oil go along to a new pricing mechanisms. Stu Turley, do you support war crimes? No, I do not. You do not understand what I'm saying. It's clear, Ryan. Have a great day. So when you sit back and take a look, go get your own podcast, Ryan.
Yeah,
have
get your own
day.
podcast.
I would like to see peace around the world and let everybody do their own thing. But
it would be
Don't
nice.
feed the trolls, Stu.
Don't feed the troll. I didn't show his screen name there. So
it's always fun to have a troll or two, though.
Oh yeah, it helps the algorithms.
What else? We still have 4 minutes.
Great summary, and getting us back on topic. That gas and nuclear are clear winners going forward. Yeah.
Well, I just want to tie it back to one thing that you said about the natural gas, and if that sort of projection of power comes from the being able to export and whatnot, and if the EU diversifies and isn't taking as much American natural gas, then somehow that will diminish American power, or what are you going to do with all this gas? And I think that the United States actually has a lot of capacity to use its own natural gas, and it doesn't necessarily have to crash the American natural gas market or production ability by reducing its exports to the EU if the EU goes another way. But there's always space to use natural gas, not just for power. There's lots of other uses for it. The same thing with oil. There's lots of other uses for it that people forget about. Yes, exactly. So
fertilizers especially.
I just discovered something fun, guys, and I apologize. I will. Ryan H was banned for their comments, and he was removed. I just realized that that's an option on StreamYard.
It is an option. Yes.
Please don't start banning everyone who disagrees with us. Please.
No,
I won't.
You have a really bad reputation.
If he calls me out by name, I have a right to ban him. So bye-bye.
So one last thing. Someone made the point that the big winners, major takeaways, gas and nuclear, are clear winners going forward. One other clear winner in the United States during this big freeze event was the coal industry. And Chris Wright's efforts over the past year to delay or cancel the retirements of dozens of coal plants that were scheduled to be retired. Had that not happened, there would have been a lot of blackouts. Not in Texas, but in MISO and in the Northeast during this major freeze event that did not happen thanks to those efforts. And I think it really highlights the need for the United States to retain what is left of our coal fleet and consider permitting new coal plants in places, because there's a lot of parts of the country where you don't have the natural gas infrastructure to provide baseload. So I think you need to really consider permitting new coal plants in certain parts of the country. And I still expect that to happen soon. That's just me.
Yeah, especially if they use the new technology that reduces the particulates and emissions.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it's got to be modern, a lot of scrubbers on it, get rid of the particulates and do it right. But I'm just saying, you've got to have base load. I think the one thing that really comes out of this is you've got to have that base load when the weather turns like this. And in New England, they're still burning fuel oil as base load during these weather emergencies. 39% one day came from fuel oil.
Fuel oil. And Hawaii, 60%. They're right up there with Saudi Arabia burning oil.
Yeah. I mean, that's for third world countries and Caribbean islands to do, okay? Not in the United States. You shouldn't still be doing that. It's the dirtiest kind of power generation. And there's no need for it. There's literally no need for it at all. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
I think I actually had way too much fun today, and I apologize that everybody else's. No comment for you. You have no comment. You no have comment. Sorry, that was fun.
Well, I have to admit, I banned a commentator, I don't know, a couple of months ago, but he was just cussing up a storm. And I just, the profanity is the one thing that's
This
gonna get you
is
banned. Even though I
loaded
say things
trouble.
like bullshit, I'm one of the hosts. I can say bullshit, but the rest of you just got to mind your manners.
What the hell?
Is that double standard? That's a double standard.
That is a double standard. But he was using the F word and some other really horrible thing.
Yeah, this is a family show.
It's a family show. PG-13.
This is a good one, and guys, I think coal is not as bad as it is meant out to be, especially when you use good technology.
You're right. Exactly. Beautiful, clean coal, as the president likes to say.
And in fact, excuse me, I could even go one further. Coal to jet fuel or gasoline and diesel works just fine.
It does.
Believe it or not.
Yeah.
Been around for a long time.
Even to natural gas, coal gasification has been a thing for many, many decades.
Yep.
World War II. That's how Germany got their fuel.
That's right.
All right. Hey, David, last word for you.
Well, I'm sorry I cussed so much during this episode. I'll try to do better next time. Y'all have a wonderful day.
Yeah. Censors will appreciate it. Miss Irina, I hope you go do some sledding. Do you have a bobsled? Do you have a
No, unfortunately.
disc?
We'll just enjoy the sight of the snow without
there you
risking limbs. Thank you for
Thank
the
you
comments.
too, MD.
And I'll just repeat what David said. Baseline matters. That's the only takeaway that's worth remembering.
And yeah, we need a photo bomb from your cat, Tammy. I hope you get to feeling better.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
The cat went around the back this time. I thought she was going to walk across the desk, but I put a bunch of books so she couldn't come over.
All right. With that, this was the Energy Realities podcast. It'll be out on all channels. Have a great time. See you guys.
Have a great
Bye,
week.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Bye.